This is my Samer augmented lesson video. The first lesson I chose was a lesson I taught on a short story called The Moment Before the Gun Went Off about a South African farmer. And he's living during apartheid. And after reading this, I set up a conversation via Skype with a South African friend of mine who spoke to my class. They were able to ask him questions. And they spoke about the reading and what life in South Africa is like after apartheid. This Samer element would be considered redefinition. Just the fact that students in Spokane were able to participate in a conversation as a group in real time with a person in South Africa who grew up after apartheid, but he was actually a part of the first generation of students who weren't segregated. The conversation went great. I would consider this redefinition because this sort of thing, for the most part, would be previously inconceivable. Fun fact, South Africa, if you were to drill a hole directly from Spokane to the other side of the earth, the nearest country would be South Africa. They're literally on the other side of the planet. So this was a pretty cool lesson to teach using technology, and it definitely redefined the way that I would teach this lesson. The second Samer element would be augmentation. After the lesson, or after the conversation, which was only 30 minutes, students were able to continue if people didn't have questions answered, or if they had further comments that they weren't able to provide to the conversation. We were able to post messages and questions on our class Edmodo page. This would be augmentation. Using Edmodo rather than sending letters saves time. It allows the conversation to continue to be relevant. Things today change so quickly. When we were teaching this lesson, this was right in the middle of some of the action that was going on in the South and on the East Coast, beginning with Ferguson, and just the race relations in this country made the conversation very relevant. So my second lesson was on Antigone. The first element of Samer that I used would be considered substitution. I introduced the unit on Antigone with a YouTube video I found about Greek theater. This is substitution basically because I didn't have to go hunting down some old copy, some old VHS or DVD of like a National Geographic documentary about Greek culture in general, or by some luck of the draw find a video that's actually about Greek theater. On YouTube there are any number of high quality, varied length videos that you can just tailor to your specific lesson plan, and that's what I chose. It was literally an introduction to Greek theater for my class. The second Samer element for this lesson was modification. I was able to find an audio clip of Creon, who's one of the characters in Antigone. It was a clip of his first speech, but it was spoken in classical Greek, and ancient Greek is a dead language, so there aren't many people who are fluent in it. It is different from modern Greek. There were a couple of proto-languages in between those two, and this is modification because it allowed me to show students what the play was actually meant to sound like. A lot of Greek theater depends on the theatrics of it. It's almost like an opera. When Greek is translated into English, it's very dull, and it makes the people sound a little slow, when in actuality the language is very emotional and it flows together really well People sound very intelligent when they're speaking. And so allowing my students to listen to an actual clip of somebody speaking in classical Greek, it basically made it so that I didn't have to convince them of all these things. They got to hear it, and we could just move on from there. We could speak about, okay, what is the author trying to do with language here? Actually, this was it was the most simple thing that I was able to add to my lessons all year using technology, and I honestly think it was the most beneficial too. It was really cool to see student reactions to this, especially after reading the beginning of this play, and just there was sort of a collective look of, oh man, are we gonna, how much more of this do we have to take? So yeah, those are my augmented lessons, and thank you for listening.